And boom goes the dynamite.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Daily Dive. It's a great day to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and it's a great day to tune into some Daily Dive action because we've got a lot to talk about today. I'm your host, Renee Washington. Joining me, producer Mike. We also have great guests coming on, including Kevin Finneran, who's going to be talking about his jersey retirement this past weekend in Philly, as the NLL legend will be joining us, as well as PK, the co-host of the Buffalo Sports Collective, and so much to get into. But really quickly, shout out to my birds. The one pick I needed to get right this weekend, that did happen. And I've already got my NFC Champions gear from 2018's Super Bowl win when we won over the Patriots. And producer Mike, welcome into the show. Let's get into our top story before I take the entire show over bragging about my squad. So our top story is another surprise that happened this weekend. The Nighthawks, no longer undefeated. I did not expect their first loss of the season, to come at the hands of the Halifax Thunderbirds, and the way that it did. They dropped a 17-7 loss. They trailed entering the fourth, 6-9. The Thunderbirds score 5 goals in the first 5 minutes, and no longer do we have the unbeaten Rochester Nighthawks. Mike, what was your initial reaction as you saw the game trending and getting closer towards the end, realizing this is going to be the Nighthawks' first loss? It's happening.
Even going into that fourth quarter when it was only a 3-goal game, you just didn't see like Rochester had any oomph. Like the first 3 quarters, I was like, what are they doing? Like they were getting out hustled on the loose balls. Like, the loose ball discrepancy was awful in this game. And their offense was cold. Rylan Hartley was back to being inconsistent. And the best part is Warren Hill, when Halifax wasn't scoring for a little bit and Nighthawks did finally get going, looked a little bit faster, Warren Hill said, not today. Just blocked a bunch of shots, and then Thunderbirds were able to pull away in that first 5 minutes in the fourth quarter. You can't have 5 goals happen. That just cannot happen. And it came in succession, and that was pretty much it. It was shocking, but if you saw like the first 3 quarters, I guess the fourth quarter wasn't too shocking because they were flat all night, I'll be honest.
You know, it was a big weekend for the Birds, and when you look at how Halifax what up, folks? When you look at the way that Halifax defeated the Nighthawks, you also have to wonder on the reverse, is this a team, as we talked about, especially coming off that big win over Buffalo last weekend, that maybe has had some more to work on? You know, maybe we've questioned their results, their success this early on in the season, and wondered if this was long term sustainable. You know, winning the first 6 games and the way that they were winning games by committee as a team, but this was very deflating, and you have to wonder if this is going to snowball into another loss, and now 6-1 becomes 6-2, 6-3, or this is a wake up call. Sometimes you need that reset. And actually, I can say for the Eagles, actually, that's a great example. When they lost to the Commanders earlier on in the season, it was like a wake up call. Every once in a while, you need that reality check almost, especially in professional sports. It's hard to go undefeated in any league. Do you expect, looking ahead at their next games, Buffalo, Halifax, New York, Riptide, do you think that this is going to be a wake up call, or is this going to be the start of a snowball ripple effect to some more losses for Rochester?
I'd like to think because the new coaching, like they have a new defensive coordinator, all kind of people over there. I like to think that because it worked so early that this will not snowball. But we were expecting the next game against Buffalo to start maybe seeing the snowball effect. The fact it happened early, like you said, could be a good thing in disguise, but it could also mean, oh no, is this who they really are from last year?
Mm.
I think they're better. I think Holden Katoni, Ryan Smith, Connor Fields have all been really good. And I'd like to think that against Buffalo, maybe they were looking ahead. I don't like to use that term a lot, but maybe they were looking ahead to Buffalo. Buffalo had a great weekend, obviously, but maybe this next week they might surprise us again and actually win this time. But it could go either way. I'd like to think it doesn't go. It doesn't, though, because I love Rylan Hartley. And he steps up, they're good.
Yeah, you have to wonder, and we'll keep an eye on if this will snowball or if this is the wake up call that they needed. And looking ahead At our 3 stars of the weekend, we talked about Rylan Hartley struggling between the pipes. Well, on the other side, Thunderbirds goalie Warren Hill had a day. 43 saves, kept Halifax ahead, helped maintain that lead, and helped to hand the Rochester Nighthawks their first loss of the season. And a 17-7 win is very convincing. So Warren Hill, a big role to help defensively keep them in the driver's seat. And we talked about the Bandits as they are getting ready to take on the Nighthawks again. Well, Bandits forward Dane Smith gets our 2nd-star of the weekend. The reigning MVP showed up and showed out in both games. And we've been talking about how tricky those back-to-back games are. Well, he led the Bandits pretty well, to say the least, in both games with 9 versus the Wings, 9 points versus the Wings, 11 points versus the Riptide, a 20-point weekend as he helped lift the Bandits in both games. And our final star of the weekend goes to Stephen Keogh. The Rock forward scored a hat trick, including the game winner just 24 seconds into overtime. Oh, man, the Roughnecks the Roughnecks get knocked off by the Rock. What a game that was. Talk about some down to the wire, jaw-dropping, on the edge of your seat lacrosse. That Roughnecks game was exactly what we anticipated. So those are our 3 stars of the weekend. And Mike, I'll ask you, with these 3, and there are others that could have been on this list, which jumps out at you most as the most exciting? And I'm going to go with Steven, but I'm going to be curious to ask your answer, to know your answer too.
I got to go with Dane Smith. I mean, it's the easy one here, but
What?
when your buddy Josh goes down, and I've been kind of saying, well, maybe Josh, is the guy, and then you just show up against the Riptide team that was hot. Jeff Teat scored 10 points again. So let's go Teat. But let's go Teat wasn't enough. And Josh Byrne was great. The Bandits were really deep, but I think Dane Smith, if he did not provide the ultimate firepower, I don't know if the other guys step up and follow him. Not saying they can't. It was very good that he led the way when they needed him most. And let's hope Josh is okay, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, look, those are 3 stars of the weekend that are well-deserved. You have Warren Hill, who helped hand the Nighthawks their first loss of the season. Stephen Keogh, who helped win with an overtime game winner in a thrilling game against the Roughnecks, as the Rock win that one. And then you also had Dane Smith, who stepped up. As you mentioned, Josh Byrne, one of the big headlines for this weekend, gets hurt in Saturday's game against the Riptide. Was seen walking afterwards, not in a walking boot. We've been doing some digging, haven't been able to find much, but so far it seems okay. But either way, he was not on the field for the remainder of that game, and Dane Smith stepped up and, as you said, helped to lead and rally the rest of the Bandits in that victory. We also saw that Dylan Ward mysteriously was not playing goalie for the Mammoth. The Seals won that one 13-9. We'll talk more about that later on this week, but Dylan Ward not between the pipes, question mark. And then also we had the highest attendance that we've seen in Colorado, with just around 10,000 in attendance in that incredible game against San Diego. Wow. We've been talking about attendance numbers. That's a bright point. Small victory for the Mammoth in that game that they did not win. Well, then also we saw Seals Dane Dobie. He reached the 1,000 career point mark. He became the 13th player in NLL history to do so, a major feat. Congratulations to Dane Dobie, and congratulations also to Trevor Baptiste of the Philadelphia Wings, who reached the 1,000 career face-off wins mark. So a lot of accomplishments this weekend, some good, some bad, some in between. And one accomplishment this weekend, NLL legend Kevin Finneran had the opportunity to watch his his jersey raised into the banners at the Wings game versus the Bandits. So we've got to talk about that in just a moment with our guest of the episode, presented by Fanatics, Kevin Finneran, joining us here on Daily Dive in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Daily Dive. I'm your host, Renee Washington. We've had a chance to talk about our three stars of the weekend. We've had a chance to also get into the exciting yet surprising loss that the Nighthawks had against Halifax. And now we have Kevin Finneran supposed to be joining us. We're waiting to have him join us in just a moment. So in the meantime, producer Mike, a lot of action this past weekend, and I'm curious to know of all the games, which game was one that you were the most surprised about? When you look across, and we saw a lot. We saw injuries, we saw first losses, we saw a little bit of everything. Was there one that jumps out at you the most that was not only surprising, but I'll take it a step further, that maybe was a sign for things to come in the NLL, whether a team turning a corner in a positive way or a not so positive way.
Right. We talked about Lyle Thompson. Would they dump him and Shane Jackson and others in Georgia? Watching that Vancouver game, oh my God, they're lost. I mean, that was brutal. Calvin Crawford, full disclosure, could have also won a star of the weekend by scoring 7 points in his Panther City debut. Will Malcolm scored like 15 points. Um, their rookie in Panther City played well as scoring like 12 points. Jonathan Donville, but Vancouver was horrible. I mean, we heard on the broadcast, friend of the show Jake Elliott and his analyst just talking about it. Their goaltender Ethan Wood was like, is he okay? Like, what is like? If there's like something like mentally going on in his brain, like he was like the simplest of shots were getting by him, and for such awesome uniforms that we talked about last week, Vancouver's just getting pushed around. It was the easiest bet that I hit this weekend. I was 5-1 on those bets, by the way. And that game was just like, man, Vancouver needs help very fast, or they're going to lose their fans very quickly, even more so.
Yeah, it was a very interesting weekend, and it started off Friday night with the two games that were very surprising in my opinion. I was like, what is happening in the NLL right now? Because as we know, Halifax knocked off the Nighthawks 17-7, but then also Buffalo was trailing the Wings, early on, and I thought it's just going to be another upset in that sense, but the Bandits did come back to win that one. And then the excitement continued into Saturday. And when you look across the games this past weekend, every game had a storyline that really gave us a lot to look forward to. And the Panther City game, as they really controlled and dominated Vancouver, a 20-7 victory in a convincing fashion. But also, as you said, Vancouver not looking connected, not looking just overall, just not a great product on the field. Great uniforms. Those looked great. And they did a great job of bringing out and, having nice uniforms. And that's about it. That's the only positive I've really got for Vancouver. But, across the league, you saw a lot this weekend. As we talked about, Toronto winning in overtime over Calgary, the Desert Dogs dropping a loss to Saskatchewan by 5, San Diego holding off the Mammoth 13-9. There's a lot of surprises there that you can take away from. Which game that, when you look across the board, along with the Panther City dominant victory over the Warriors, of these games, who do you think needed this win the most this past weekend? Whose win was the most pivotal for them at this stage of the season that they needed to claim that victory?
I would go with the Rush. The Rush have had 4 games that were, well, 2 of them obviously that they lost were close, and they lost in
Mhm.
overtime. They needed to be back home. I told Cody, I asked Cody, I was like, was this like a carpet kind of game? Like, just walk in and walk out, and that's pretty much it. And he made, I mean, Vegas was really good,
Yeah.
and Vegas fought, but the Rush needed to just get that confidence back. Mark Matthews had like 12 points of their 15 goals total. So it was good for them. And they obviously have some big games coming up, but I was very impressed with the Rush because they kept it really awesome. I do want to ask you, though, we have Hudson Jackson of Action Network, a very prominent betting site, coming up on Friday. Dylan, remember before the season we talked about how Dylan Ward was supposed to be like that guy. We were told that they were supposed to tell people about injuries beforehand. So what happened?
Yeah.
Why was Dylan Ward not there?
Yeah, we did talk earlier in one of our very first episodes of Daily Dive about the injury report that's supposed to be coming out each week, and how fans were going to get that insight into, the status of players. And yet we don't know what happened with Dylan Ward. And you know what? I'll take it a step further. We'll keep an eye on what's released about Josh Byrne too. There's injuries happening. They're supposed to be getting reported. They're not fully getting reported. So we will have to take a look at that. But we have talked about the excitement of this weekend on the field. There was also a very exciting moment as well, as NLL legend Kevin Finneran had a chance to see number 11, his jersey retired, into the banners in the Wings game versus the Bandits this past weekend. So with that, let's welcome in our big guest by Fanatics, Kevin Finneran, to join us here on Daily Dive and talk a little bit more about that experience. Kevin, welcome. Congratulations on the excitement. Last time you were on the show, we were previewing what was to come with this weekend, and here you are. Take us through what that experience was like, seeing number 11 being raised into the banners, and just to be able to have that moment with family, with friends in Philly this past weekend.
I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Oh, Renee, thank you so much for setting that up. And all the best to you. And I can't wait to talk to you and Mike about, the present state of the league and the injuries and all that stuff. So it's great that you dive into that and the conspiracy theories of like who's reporting injuries. So that's wonderful reporting. But Renee, great to see you. What I've been saying the last 3 days, it was the greatest night of my life. It was the greatest night of my life. It really was. And obviously my family, my ex-teammates that were all there, the kids that I coach, the banner going up in the rafters, and all the great fans that were there and came and saw me at halftime and throughout the game and gave me so many props. It was the night of my life.
Aww. What was that moment? You talk about it being the best night of your life. Just can you talk us through that moment on the field where it feels like, I'm sure, everything paused? All, as we talked about before on the show, all the work over the years, all the excitement of goals and wins and, just major moments that you had playing lacrosse. In that moment on the field, what was that like? What was going through your head? Maybe there was nothing going through your head at all. But can you talk us through a little bit more specifically what you felt in that moment?
So I was just outside the bench, all my ex-teammates, and there were like 25 of them, which was amazing. Tony Resch and Paul Denikin and Chris Flynn and on and on and on. So I'm looking to them, and then I had the head of the cheerleaders, the Wings cheerleaders, Sam. She was directing me, chill, Kev, you kind of go on. And so then they put the video on, and the highlight, the memorable video, whatever you want to call it. And that's when I almost lost it, Renee. That's when I almost lost it. And and I'm sure I will again when I really sit down and watch it. I've watched bits and pieces, and my buddies and teammates have sent me things. That's when I really lost it. Almost lost it, I should say. And then I got asked to come and go to the podium, and Matt Cord introduced me. And then I just try to get myself together and remember all the people that helped me get here. And I didn't want to forget anybody. And then as soon as I was done with my speech, I walked off and I high-fived my teammates and the kids that I invited to come over, the kids that I coach that were on the bench sitting. Like there were 10 of them. And then they said, one of my teammates, I'm not sure, said, Finn, you got to go back to the podium. They're going to pull your banner down. So I was clueless. And so there were those 4 or 5 moments that made it so special. And when they pulled the banner down, that was great. And then I was just proud.
Yeah. Wow. Well, again, congratulations on such a special moment. As you say, the best moment of your life, that you had the opportunity to have so many incredible people there with you celebrating in person. But as you also mentioned, having a chance to reflect back on the people that over the years have helped lead to this moment. Well, unfortunately, the Wings did drop that game to the Bandits 13-9. The Wings right now working through some things, but in Philly, still an exciting day. I see you came prepared with the gear. An exciting weekend for us Philly sports fans. So I don't want to badger the Wings too much. We'll talk a lot about them moving forward. I'm curious your thoughts on the Eagles heading to the Super Bowl. This is something that have been saying for many, many weeks now. The Eagles are primed to be a NFC champion, definitely primed to be able to get back to the Super Bowl. They were 16-3 when they won the Super Bowl back in 2018. They're actually 16-3 as of this past weekend's victory over the 49ers. Similar excitement, but similar magic that we're feeling in Philly. As the Eagles explode, I don't care what injuries happen. It's a part of the game. We all know that. You still have to take care of business, and they did. As a Philly sports fan and seeing the Eagles win that game and heading to the Super Bowl in a couple weeks, what are your thoughts to cap off what was already a very incredible weekend for you?
Not to digress, the only thing that would have made it super special if we had beaten our arch rival, the Bandits, but that's for another segment. I could totally get into that. But the Eagles, like the Wings, they are winning with defense. We had an incredible defense. The Eagles, oh my goodness, their defense, juggernauts. Everybody takes care of their business. Everybody's accountable. Everybody's a teammate. Mm-hmm. And then we have our offense, our Eagles offense, like our Wings offense. Everybody wanted to step up. Everybody wanted to make plays. And then, like the Wings, we had amazing coaches. And like our Birds, we have amazing coaches. So it's going to be a special 2 weeks. I can't wait. And what a matchup. What a matchup. I was hoping for Kansas City. I didn't want to play Cincinnati. I wanted Kansas City. I wanted Coach Reed. I wanted Kelsey. I wanted Mahomes, yada, yada, yada.
Yes. You know what? I agree with you. And I love how you compared the Wings to the Eagles and so many similarities in how they play and how they're structured. And, now for the Eagles looking ahead to Kansas City, definitely going to be a great matchup facing Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But we are celebrating in Philly, and we will be celebrating for the next few weeks, and we will be celebrating a Super Bowl champion as well. So I want to just thank you again for taking time to join us here on Daily Dive. It's always a pleasure. You just radiate and exude this energy of positivity and motivation, and just everything that you're saying is so phenomenal. You can hear why you were so successful on the field and even just how you carry yourself. So Kevin, thank you so much. Again, congratulations to you on an incredible opportunity and accomplishment of having your jersey retired. And we will definitely have to have you back on the show later at some point to discuss more around the NLL, around the cross, around anything, because I just enjoy sports talk with you. So thank you, Kevin, for taking time to join us here.
Thank you, Renee. I feel in my heart that I'm going to speak with you again when the Wings have a chance to play for the NLL championship in a couple of months.
I love it. Manifestation, speaking it into existence. Kevin Finneran, everybody, NLL legend who had his jersey retired this past weekend as the Wings dropped a loss to the Bandits. Well, as he mentioned, never great to lose to the Bandits, but on the other side, for Buffalo, a great weekend. And so with that, we've got to welcome in our guest, PK, co-host of Buffalo Sports Collective. And PK, welcome to Daily Dive. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Of course, of course. Well, we were just talking about the Wings, and now let's go to the other side and talk about the Bandits. Bandits sweep the weekend, knocking off Philly and then defeating the Riptide Saturday night. How important was it for them to get both of these wins, especially as they're chasing that number one spot and seeing Rochester actually drop a loss this past weekend as well?
Yeah, I mean, the 13-9 victory over Philly, down 6-3 at halftime. Then you storm back 7 straight goals. To end the second quarter, you get that one right by Brandon Robinson, the dunk behind the net, and then you run 6 more in the third quarter. The biggest issue, the offense that I saw, the first quarter, they were dropping balls. They weren't coordinating with one another. Then the second quarter, Zach Higgins just stood on his head. There was no beating him whatsoever. Then the defense just couldn't stay out of the box. 5 straight penalties to you got to battle yourself when you're in like that, because your defense is working hard. You can't get your offense jiving because you're already down a man. Then the second half, they just put it all together. I mean, they got to Zach Higgins early. They had that 4-goal run in the fourth quarter. The defense played very aggressive but smart. And then the greatest goalie of all time, and Matt Vince, stood on his head once again, had a great weekend. And then, like I said, New York 9-3 run in the second half. It felt more like there were self-inflicted wounds by the Bandits defense, where there was just miscommunications. They weren't switching on picks, but the offense was just flowing, especially when Josh Byrne went down. Guys stepped up. Ian McKay stepped up. Brandon Robinson stepped up. I said it on the show when we were recording yesterday that Brandon Robinson looked like Josh Byrne 2.0 when Josh Byrne went down, some of those moves he had. But if you want to take a little bit of positive, if Josh Byrne got hurt in the first half, they were able to make those adjustments at the second half in halftime. I'm wondering if it would have been a little bit differently if he would have gotten hurt in the second half, where you had to adjust on the fly. You had that halftime to be able to adjust.
That's a really great point. Injuries are never good. We don't like to see them happen, but the timing of it before half, giving them a chance to regroup and plan going into the second half does give you a little bit extra time to just, take a beat, reset and move forward. But as you mentioned, and I like your breakdown offensively and defensively, and of course between the pipes with Matt Vince of what you saw this past weekend. But we do have to talk about that Josh Byrne injury. What do you know about the injury? And as you mentioned, we've got Josh Byrne 2.0. So it was great to see other players stepping up once he was out the remainder of the game. But what do you know about the injury, and what do you expect moving forward of how the Bandits will adjust if he's not able to take the field this weekend?
Well, as far as the injury, I pretty much know what everybody else does. Nothing. It's very hard to get any information out of the lacrosse league. I know they've taken steps forward, but they still have a ways to go with that kind of stuff. Like you were mentioning earlier on the show, Dylan Ward had no idea it wasn't going to start. But I think moving forward, if he is going to be missing time, you're going to see more of the offense that you saw in the second half versus the New York game. I think Ian McKay is going to stop playing so much defense in the transition game. You're just going to see him more of a full-time role on the forward end. You're going to have guys like Brandon Robinson and Brad McCulley who have been more complementary pieces and not relying on them to be point producers. But going forward, they're going to have to be relied on to do more. And then, you're still missing Chris Cloutier. Chase Frazier's still out. Connor Fields is in Rochester now. And if you're Josh Byrne too, that's a ton of offensive firepower that is just not there anymore if Josh Burns is out. I think you're also going to see more in the transition game, where you're going to see guys being able to step forward. My co-host Phil and I last year joking all the time, it was like full line changes every time the Bandits got the ball off turnover, because their offense was just so high powered. This year, I think you're going to see the defense and the transition game give more opportunities and push the ball forward and get more chances that way, because you're hurting so much on the forward group.
Yeah. It's on the injury side. First of all, we need more information for all injuries. I thought we were supposed to be getting more, but apparently we still got some work to do with that too. What we do know is he's injured, and we're not sure of the timeline of when he will return. But as you mentioned, a huge hit. Dane Smith did a tremendous job stepping up to close out the remainder of the game in his absence. But this is a big game this upcoming weekend, facing the Nighthawks. Dropped the loss to the Nighthawks last weekend. Then the Bandits took care of business, swept this weekend. We saw Rochester get their first loss of the season with this rematch coming up, and a huge game for standings, a huge game for as we're looking ahead to the postseason, which wild to think about, but you always have in the back of your mind, what are you expecting and anticipating in this rematch game against the Nighthawks on Saturday?
Well, speaking Monday, it's might look a lot differently on Saturday if Josh Byrne is out. But if you do have it full go, it seems like Rochester, they don't have that go-to player like the Dane Smith or the Josh Byrne, but you have a collection of guys who are really, really good. I mean, last time we faced them, Connor Fields, 8 points, Katoni, 7 points, Smith killed us with 9 points, Hogarth got 5. So it's a collection where you might not have a guy that can go out and get you 10, 11, 12 points, but you got 4 or 5 guys that can go out and get you 6, 7, 8 points. So you're going to have to, I want to see more of the defense that we saw in the second half versus Philly and New York going into this game. If you get that, it's going to give your offense that is hurting right now a lot more opportunities. But I mean, their top 4 of their top 5 point producers right now are averaging over 3 turnovers a game. But on the other side of that, Katoni, Fields, Smith, and Knight all have 4 loose balls, averaging 4 loose balls a game. So while you might be able to get them to turn over the ball, they're getting those second, third, fourth looks where when they have the ball, players like Nanakoke, like Dane Smith, like Josh Byrne, don't have the opportunity to cash in. So we need the defense to step up and play more like they did in the first half versus Rochester rather than the third and fourth quarters that we saw.
You're right. You're right. And it's definitely tough when a team like is playing the way that Rochester is. They're winning by committee. You know, it isn't just one player that's leading in goals and assists. They have multiple players. You talked about Holden Katoni, and everybody is stepping up and finding ways to help them win games, which defensively we saw the Bandits get a little bit exposed at times with that in the first game that they played against the Nighthawks. You have to play them straight up. You can't just lock in on one guy or even 2 guys, because then somebody else is going to step up. So it is going to be a great rematch. Very, we love being able to predict things and talk about things early, even if the game is on Saturday. But you love the way that the storybook is kind of unfolding and having these storylines come forward. My last question for you really quickly before I wrap up here, PK. Predictions. It's Monday. We get it. But the game will be here before we know it. What are your predictions on the Nighthawks Bandits game Saturday? I'm going to ask you more specifically your score predictions, because I have a feeling you're going to be leaning towards Buffalo to win. So score predictions on this rematch.
Yeah, we do this on our show all the time where we're predicting what the scores are going to be. And I figured this question was going to come, so I try to figure it out. I'll go 13-11 Bandits victory. I think it's going to be a close one, but I think towards the end, they're going to be able to pull away a bit more. But I think it's going to be a close battle all night.
All righty. Well, there you have it. 13-11 Bandits winning over Rochester, getting redemption after the loss to them this last 2 weekends ago now. That will be very telling. We'll see what happens. PK, thank you so much for joining us. One of the co-hosts of Buffalo Sports Collective. Appreciate you taking time to be here. Definitely would love to have you on again in the future to talk more NLL, more Bandits. And it's been great hearing you dive into what you've seen so far from Buffalo. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really love what you guys are doing. Live lacrosse talk. The sport doesn't get the attention it deserves. So the more coverage we get, the more the game's going to grow.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, PK. Appreciate what you're doing as well. Keep up the fantastic work and all your Buffalo sports coverage. Well, there you have it. Last time the Bandits faced the Nighthawks, they dropped a 3-goal loss. And according to PK, it's going to be a 13-11 win for Buffalo when they face off Saturday. So it is only Monday. We've got plenty to get into this week as we're talking about preparing for the upcoming weekend's games, looking at injuries, looking at what we saw this past weekend, recapping, and much more here on Daily Dive. So from my producer, Mike, I'm Renee Washington saying thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Daily Dive. And we hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Monday. Be sure to join us back here for more Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Fly, Eagles, fly. And tune in at Daily Dive Lax for more lacrosse talk. Have a good one, guys. See you next time.